This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, welcome. In response to our continued response to COVID-19 pandemic, today's meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District is being held primarily online with appropriate measures in place for those participating in person here in our Sacandaga Field office. Our hearts go out to those impacted by COVID-19 and for those caring for the sick. Today's meeting order will include the Finance Committee and then the regular board meeting. Meeting agendas are available at the Hudson River Black River Regulating District, HRBRRD.ny.gov under board meetings. We ask that if you choose other programs on your computer or phone, we ask that you close other programs on your computer or phone, silence your cell phone, and mute your audio. Let me stress the last part. If you are not speaking, please put your device on mute to minimize background noise, echo, and feedback. The conference organizer will monitor the program's chat function for public comment. Comments may also be emailed to HRAO@HRBRRD.ny.gov. Mr. DeWitt.
I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting. A pledge allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
Committee Chair Kenneth DeWitt.
Here.
Members Albert Hayes.
Here.
Jeffrey Rosenthal. He's here.
He's here.
Richard Bird.
I'm here.
Board Chairman Mark Finkel.
Here.
Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
Robert Leslie. Chief Engineer Robert Fultan.
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Manicha.
Here.
Area Administrator John Hodgson.
We heard him say here from this office, Rob.
Okay. And Compliance Officer Stephanie Rozicki.
Here.
All counted and present.
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to adopt or revise the meeting agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. Rosenthal.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of June 9th, 2020 Financial Committee meeting minutes. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Rosenthal, Mr.
Bird.
Third. Committee business. Can I have a vote on approval of the minutes?
Aye.
So
Aye.
carried. So carried. Committee business minutes, a meeting under new business, a resolution to authorize the publication of notice that the district is considering changes in permit fees. Mr. Callahan.
Thank you, Chairman DeWitt, and thank you to you and also Mr. Rosenthal for participation in our working group to look at the permit fee structure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, as you know, this has been an issue that we've been looking at for some time in an effort to better align our costs associated with the program with the revenue the program generates. Certainly 20 years since the residential permit structure has been adjusted, 30 years since the commercial permit structure has been adjusted, and really probably a reluctance to do so in recent years because this is an issue that's not been without some controversy in the past. Cognizant of that, and with the board's direction, we have, I think, conjunction with the great work the staff has done here all across the board, really made an effort here to reach out. I want to, in particular, thank the Sacandaga Protection Committee, the Great Sacandaga Lake Association, the Town of Bay Property Owners Association, and Edinburgh Marina, just among a few groups that have really lent a laboring oar here to move this process forward, in addition to several other local elected officials, residents, and stakeholders that we've reached out to try and incorporate, to the extent possible, any feedback into this process. And I want to note, Mr. Chairman, that this is the beginning of the process. The regulations, our current regulations, are very clear as to the process for gaining approval to adjust the fees. The regulations specify that the board will authorize publication of these fees for 3 weeks, consecutive weeks in the papers of record. We're also certainly going to use the tools at our disposal, such as the website, such as social media, to try and get the word out. The board cannot take any action until 30 days of these proposed fees last having been posted. And so this would be taken up at the September meeting, but preceding that, the board needs to authorize staff to post these proposed fees. So what we're attempting to do with this proposal, Mr. Chairman, is realize at the end of it approximately a 25% increase in user fee revenue, access fee revenue. And we do that by adjusting modest adjustments, and we've gone to great lengths to avoid, raising a particular fee, $2.37 and that sort of thing. So we're trying to deal with even numbers. We want this to be easy for folks. We want it to be something that they can remember. But we also, as the board knows and has provided a great deal of direction on, are working feverishly and successfully to build this online permit processing capability for the 2021 season. So we see these as very much working in concert. The increase and improvement in customer service, the ease with which somebody can apply for a permit, renew a permit, but also this sort of long in the works, a modest increase in permit fee revenue. So just a couple of examples of what we're talking about here. We certainly deal with a lot of 10-foot permits. So a 10-footer is going from $43 to $50 to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about. If you have a 100-foot permit, that's going to go from $56 to $75. And what we're doing now currently is we apply a $20 for each additional 100-foot increment as the permit areas increase in size. That $20 per 100 feet will go to $25 on a renewal. On a new permit, it'll go from $30 to $35. So again, something that we hope is very easy for people to appreciate and understand, and just a modest adjustment to help us better align our costs with the revenue. So with that said, and I also want to note, I know that today we'll be joined in the meeting virtually by many representatives of these groups that have worked so closely with us to introduce this proposal to the board. Some of them may, when we get to public comment during the regular board meeting, Mr. Chairman, elect to speak. They're not required to. I don't necessarily want to invite that now, just in terms of housekeeping and moving the meeting along. But with that, and certainly subject to the questions of the board, I ask for any questions or discussion that you might like to facilitate, Mr. Chairman.
Can I call for a resolution authorizing the publication of notice that the district is considering a change in permit fees?
You want to make a motion on that?
Yeah, can I have a motion on that? I'm sorry.
I'd like to
So
make a-
moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries.
And who seconded?
Mr. Rosenthal,
Mr. Rosenthal moved, and who seconded?
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes. Thank you.
Under new business, we're not going to have a resolution at this time authorizing the imposition of administrative fees. Mr. Callahan will discuss that.
Thank you, Chairman DeWitt. And this, again, is something that we'll take up at the September meeting in concert with the adoption, if the board elects to do so, of the new fee schedule. And we have proposed a $100 administrative penalty as part of that fee schedule. But importantly, the board had previously rescinded its earlier resolutions authorizing administrative penalty schedules, electing to adopt its recourse to the court system if it came to that. But given the fact that this is an important tool to have in the toolbox, we need first for the board to authorize the regulating district to assess these administrative penalties, and then we would add it to the fee schedule. Again, we'll take that up in September, but I do want to talk a little bit about where that comes from, what it is, what it isn't, and of course entertain any questions. But again, like so many other things, we look for other comparable areas, other agencies, and what they may or may not be doing. We've done that in this case, looking at the Canal Corporation's rules and regulations. They have an access permit system that is not unlike ours in many respects. This is the standard fee that they have for administrative penalties within their permit system, with which I'm not unfamiliar, having spent a couple of decades there. But it seemed like, and I want to note in the past, and as detailed, I think, in the board packet, our administrative penalties have ranged from $100 to $1,000. So we're certainly not seeking board approval to go back to that amount. And it certainly does not preclude the board from seeking any redress through the courts in the event they were compelled to do so. Certain activities necessitated doing so. But this is rather, again, a modest fee that we have comparable elsewhere in state government that we thought applied. And it's an important tool to have in the toolbox, I think, in terms of compelling good behavior. This is not, we don't see this as a revenue generator for us. We don't see it as, we don't see that there is a huge issue out there that we need to go out and address right now. But not having the ability to do this absent the court system, where it's certainly a tool that the regulating district has had in its toolbox previously, it just makes sense to us to adopt it as part of the new fee schedule. But again, what the board will need to do prior to that happening is separately authorize the board to include that in that fee schedule. So I want to thank General Counsel for working closely with me on this issue as well. And certainly, unless he has anything to add, we'd invite any questions or discussions from any members of the board on that.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll just pass that on. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we adjourn, was it your intention to advance the proposed resolution for the imposition of administrative penalties to the board so that they can consider it at a series of board meetings? Just
No.
procedurally, it makes more sense to me.
We're not going to advance it at this time.
We're not going to advance it at this time.
So it's going to stay in committee.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you still on that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't have my gavel, but we're going to call. We're going to call the July meeting of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District to order. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
It's 10:16. Board Chairman Mark Finkel.
Here.
First Vice Chair Jeffrey Rosenthal.
Here?
Second Vice Chair Kenneth DeWitt.
Here.
Board members Albert Hayes and Richard Byrd.
Here.
Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie here. Chief Engineer Robert Fulton.
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Minicha.
Here.
Area Administrator John Hodgkin.
Here.
And Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
All accounted for.
Thank you. I need a motion to adapt the meeting agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Introduction of guests. We're fortunate to have two in-kind officers here that we're going to be honoring later. Shane Manns and Paul Patrick. And guests. Welcome, gentlemen.
And another officer.
We may have Lieutenant Matt Clemens also.
Oh, and Lieutenant Matt Clemens, sorry. Public comment period. Is there anybody on the screen that would like to address the board? Okay. That being said, the approval of the June 9th, 2020 and June 23rd regular board meeting minutes.
So
Any
moved.
motion to accept?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion, changes, or revisions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, okay, that's what he, okay. Next is the report of our executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report appears on page 44. Just note quickly a couple of items. We have guests here. We are fully reopened pursuant to our phase 3. All of our employees are back in reporting status, although working in many cases, alternate work schedules are still telecommuting partially. I just want to again thank all of the team here for the way they've handled this. It's been a very unsettled time. They've been asked to do things differently. They've been asked to do things they don't ordinarily need to do. They continue to respond with great spirit that they ought to be commended for. So just a great job by the whole team here working throughout this issue. And I don't think we ever missed a beat in terms of our level of customer service and doing our critically important missions. So again, I want to thank everybody for the way they've responded to that. And the other issue I'll note again is just the great experience working with so many stakeholders like the Sacandaga Protection Committee, Great Sacandaga Lake Association, Town of Day, Property Owners Association, and many others to try and advance this fee proposal. So a great example, I think, of collaboration and full transparency. So that's made all the difference in my mind. And I just also want to note that Mr. Hodgson, Mr. Kiskis, and I met with Mayfield Mayor Jamie Ward on just a few days ago on the 2nd, relative to a trail, mostly on village property around Mayfield Lake. That's going to be a great collaborative effort, and I'm very proud that we continue to work closely with the local elected officials around the Great Sacandaga Lake and throughout our areas of jurisdiction. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause and see if there's any questions from anyone.
Any questions or comments? Thank you very much, and I agree that things have gone very smoothly, and it's to your credit.
I agree.
To the staff's credit.
Whole team, please. Thank you.
It is now my honor to actually honor a couple of in-kind officers on a job well done. I'll ask the gentleman to come in. Shane Manns and Paul Patrick. Welcome, gentlemen. As many of you know, on June 6th, 2020, an incident occurred, and we're here to honor these two gentlemen for the way they reacted. There's a ton of whereases and so forth. Bear with me. Whereas an extraordinary wind event developed in the area of the Great Sacandaga Lake on June 6th of this year, almost immediately resulting in extremely hazardous water conditions. And whereas Officer Manns and Patrick were on patrol in the vicinity of the Broad Alton boat launch on such a date. And whereas, as one vessel approached the docking area, it suddenly reversed, causing a woman to fall overboard from the bow into the water. And whereas, without hesitation, Officer Paschik rendered assistance to safely pull the woman out of the water. And whereas, moments later, a personal watercraft attempted to dock in the hazardous conditions, with the operator also falling into the water, unable to safely get back to the dock. And whereas Officer Mans and Paschik both immediately rendered assistance and pulled the man from the water onto the dock. And whereas the selfish dedication to the safety of others exhibited by Officer Mans and Paschik throughout the chaotic conditions resulted in a positive outcome for a situation which may have otherwise proved tragic. And whereas through their heroic actions, Officer Mans and Paschik exemplify the highest standards of public service and devotion to duty. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the Board of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District hereby commends environmental conservation officers Shane Mans and Paul Paschik for their selfless and heroic actions on behalf of boaters in distress on June 6, 2020, and be it further resolved that the Board of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District expresses its sincere gratitude on behalf of the Great Sacandaga Lake community for Officers Mann and Paschik, as well as colleagues, for their continued vigilance and dedication to the safety of those on and around the Great Sacandaga Lake. And be it further resolved that copies of this resolution be transmitted to Officers Mann and Paschik with the board's appreciation and admiration for their continued service to the people of the state of New York. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just note, we are going to transmit those copies to the officers. We're not going to hand them anything today, cognizant of the COVID-19 restrictions, but we'll put something in an envelope, let it sit for a few days, and then get it to you. And I just want to see if Lieutenant Matt Clemens wants to say anything as well in recognition of his folks.
Just again, thank you to the officers for responding today. They are very selfless. They act in this manner regardless. Every day they go out there. And thank you again to the Hudson River Black River Regulating District for continued support and working relationship moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
If you can hang out, because we'll go together. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's the good part of being the chairman, being able to do things like that. Okay, we move right on to staff committee reports, finance committee, Mr. Duet.
Can I have a resolution authorizing the publication of notice that the district is considering a change in permit fees, which Mr. Callahan already went over, unless there are any other questions or comments?
We have a motion?
We probably should open up to public comment again in case anybody had an opportunity or wanted an opportunity to speak.
Good point. Is there any comments on this resolution? If not, I'll call for a vote.
I'm sorry, this is Edward Ludlam with the GSLA. Would you permit me just to speak really briefly?
And you certainly have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, two things. First of all, I want you to know that we support the resolution as it's presented. And specifically, I want to thank John and the staff for being so open and working with us. All right. I thought that this went very well. I'm really pleased. And that's really all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Any other comments from anyone? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think that completes your report.
That completes my report.
Next, General Counsel, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would remind everybody that JCOPE has extended the filing deadline for the financial disclosure statements to Monday, August 17th. Anybody that has already filed that, thank you. Please alert me. Other than that, most of my time has been addressing issues pertaining to this meeting and the June special meeting, both of those held online. As I understand, the September meeting will be also. And I'd like to report that Gina Bowman and Megan Cole have converted and posted the old board meeting videos to the regulating district website. And as a result, we are done with Granicus.
That completes your report?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mr. Leslie? If not, Compliance Officer, Mr. Zicki.
Good morning and thank you. My report begins on page 48. On pages 49 to 51 are the contract status reports. Please take a look at those pages. They are included in the board packet for your review and satisfy the public authority requirement. Our internal control compliance audits are underway. I have completed the Hudson River area office and am wrapping up the field office this week. By the end of next week, we should have the Black River area completed as well. All of our MWBE reports have been submitted, end of year cleanup. It provides us an opportunity to review all of our contracts, all of our utilization, and make any changes as necessary. We had no changes. Everything was submitted accurately, so our fiscal year 1920 is now complete. If you have any questions, if not, that completes my report.
Any questions for Mr. Zicki?
I have none.
No?
Thank you very much for your report. Next, Chief Fiscal Officer, Mr. Minichia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. CFO report is available for your review on page 52 of the board packet. I'm happy to answer questions about anything contained in it. I'm hoping we can spend a few minutes walking through the supplemental information I shared via email yesterday. I think John is going to try to have that on the screen if you do not have that copy at your fingertips. Well, in the last month, I made the statement that the district cannot continue to deliver operationally on its essential mission, nor make the necessary investments in its infrastructure without significant increases to assessments charged to beneficiaries, a new revenue source, or a dramatic reduction in a big expense area like real property taxes. Let's unpack that a bit. On the second page, you see a graph that illustrates actual and projected spending on engineering and construction. You are already familiar with a portion of this spending, having authorized the spillway project at Conklin. We've also submitted information to the Environmental Facilities Corporation about phase 2, which involves reconstruction of the dam channel and rock foundation. If financed by EFC, this would amount to over $25 million of $30.1 million in the Hudson River area. The balance is a potential project at Indian Lake. The $10 million listed represents potential projects at each of the structures in the Black River area. If you assume the district is successful in borrowing for the entire cost of these projects, which I think prudent given the historically low levels of interest rates at this time, the next page illustrates the growth in debt service the district will have to pay in the next cycle. While the total is projected to be $4.3 million over the next triennial budget, the amount in each year would not be $1.4 million, or roughly 1/3 of that. John, if you want to advance to the next. We currently, I'm sorry, you can stay there. My apologies. We currently project the debt service to grow from approximately $250,000 in the first year to 2.3 million in the final year of the triennial, as we would not borrow the entire $40 million all at once. Unlike other expenses like depreciation and OPEB, debt service is a cash outlay. So the district is going to need to identify other sources of funds to make those payments, even if it is successful in holding growth in all the other areas of spending to a 2% annual increase. On this page, you see the current and recent history of income the district has received from the downstream counties in the case of the Hudson River area, and counties and hydroelectric producers in the case of the Black River area. If the district cannot obtain an increase from these sources above 2% annually, it will have to look elsewhere on both the revenue and expense side of the ledger. On the next page, the graph illustrates the change in sources of district funds over the last few years. With the exception of 2016, when the district received a one-time increase from hydroelectric producers in the Hudson River area to catch up for years when litigation held up payments, the district's revenue has been relatively constant. This has been the case because, as most of you know quite well, the district's sources of funds in the Hudson River area were the subject of nearly 15 years of litigation. Finally, on this page, I also mentioned that we were about to enter into negotiations with Brookfield Renewable about the EJ West agreement, which will expire on June 30th, 2021. On the expense side, found on the next page, you'll see that the district's personnel service and real estate tax expenses have grown by $1 million over the last few years and represented nearly 80% of the total in 2019. As to new sources of funds or increases from existing sources of funds, the district will be left with no choice but to alter its spending if it is to continue fulfilling its operational mission and making necessary investments in its infrastructure. We've already taken steps in this regard and will continuously look for ways to deliver services better, faster, and cheaper. This and recent board meetings are one of many examples of steps we have already taken to try to save money. Let me stop here and ask if there are any comments or questions that anyone would like to ask.
Wow. Any comments or discussion from other board members? Obviously, we have to address this.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just add to Mr. Nietzsche's excellent report. He correctly indicates that we are looking at a variety of things, some of which we've already presented, and some of which we're still working on. It's likely that there won't be a silver bullet here, but rather a number of things we do over the course of several years, just to address both the revenue and the expense side. And with the board's support, we'll continue to look under every rock, report back, and I'm confident we've got the right team in place to move forward and be a sustainable organization for many years to come and continue to deliver on our critically important services.
Yep. Any other comments from anybody?
Mr. Chairman, I just need to stop sharing my screen.
Okay.
And I don't think I haven't done this successfully yet.
You still have everybody?
Still here, and the graph is no longer on the screen that I'm looking at, John.
Right, we just need to get a camera back.
Oh, this technology is wonderful. When it works.
We can see you. We can see you, John. The camera's on.
Well, you can. Okay, stand by.
There we go. Back again. Thank you, Mr. Manich, for that great report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Move to Chief Engineer, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on page 74. June continued to be dry. as similar to April and May, with the Hudson River area seeing about 20 to 25% of normal precip, and the Black River area receiving about 35 to 40% of historic average precipitation. We are using reservoirs to augment the natural flow that is occurring both in the Hudson and the Black River. Right now, we are providing about 64% of the flow below the confluence of the Sacandaga River and the Hudson at Hadley, and about 29% of the flow in Watertown in the Black River is from our reservoirs. And as such, we continue to draw down a little bit more rapidly than as compared to our historic average, and are about 2 feet below the target elevation at Great Sacandaga Lake, about 1.3 feet below the target elevation at Stillwater Reservoir. Be happy to answer any questions on reservoir operation if you have them.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Area Administrator, Mr. Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report starts on page 104. Staff here at SFO has been busy with boat count on the commercials and special areas, survey work, encroachment issues, and actually we're still removing debris from the lake with the work boat. All that stuff that came down in that October storm. I assisted staff from the Black River and had the Hudson River area staff up at 6 Lake. We had an issue with gate 2 earlier this year when closing. It would only close to 6 inches and we couldn't get it down any further. So we have sandbagged the opening to store water, and we're working on installing the stop gates so we can dewater and inspect. We're having a little problem with that. Some of the concrete has deteriorated, and when the stop gate goes down in the channel, it's still allowing some water to pass. So we've had staff up there diving stuff in the gaps to control the water a little better so we can do water and get in there, inspect the gate and repair it. That's my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions for Mr. Hodgins? Thank you, sir. Any board member questions or comments? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a resolution for our next board meeting, which is September 9th here at the Mayfield office. And please note that's a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday. So we'll be meeting Wednesday, September 9th. I'd like a motion for that meeting, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion for adjournment.
I will.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
That was Mr. Hayes and Mr. Byrd.